John Thomas Scopes was a teacher in Dayton, Tennessee, who was charged on May 5, 1925, with violating Tennessee's Butler's Act, which prohibited the teaching of human evolution in Tennessee schools. He was tried in a case known as the Scopes Monkey Trial.
The law, which had been passed in March, made it a misdemeanor, punishable by fine, to teach any theory that denies the story of the divine creation of man as taught in the Bible, and to teach instead that man has descended from a lower order of animals. With local businessman George, Scopes had conspired to get charged with the violation, and after his arrest, the pair enlisted the aid of the American Civil Liberties Union to organize a defense. Hearing of this coordinated attack on Christian fundamentalism, Williams Bryan, the three-time Democratic presidential candidate and a fundamentalist hero, volunteered to assist the prosecution. Soon after, the great attorney Clarence Darrow agreed to join the ACLU in defense, and the stage was set for one of the most famous trials in U.S. history.
On July 10th, the monkey trial got underway, and within a few days, lots of spectators and reporters had descended on Dayton as preachers set up revival tents along the city's main streets to keep the faithful stirred up. Inside the county courthouse, the defense suffered early setbacks when Judge John Ralston ruled against their attempt to prove the law unconstitutional and then refused to end his practice of opening each day's proceeding with prayer.
Outside, Dayton took on a carnival-like atmosphere as an exhibit featuring two chimpanzees and a supposed missing link opened in town, and vendors sold Bibles, toy monkeys, and hot dogs. The missing link was in fact Joe Vines of Burlington, Vermont, a 51-year-old man who was of short stature and possessed a receding forehead and a protruding jaw. One of the chimpanzees, named Joe Mindy, wore a plaid suit, a brown fedora, and white spats, and entertained Dayton's citizens by monkeying around on the courthouse lawn.
In the courtroom, Judge Ralston destroyed the defense's strategy by ruling that expert scientific testimony on evolution was inadmissible, on the grounds that it was Scopes who was on trial, not the law he had violated. The next day, Ralston ordered that trial moved to the courthouse lawn, fearing that the weight of the crowd inside was in danger of collapsing the floor.
In front of several thousand spectators in the open air, Darrow changed his tactics, and his sole witness called Bryan in an attempt to discredit his literal interpretation of the Bible. In a searching examination, Bryan was subjected to serve ridicule and forced to make ignorant and contradictory statements to the amused of the crowd. On July 21st, in his closing speech, Darrow asked the jury to return a verdict of guilty and order that the case might be appealed. Under Tennessee law, Bryan was thereby denied opportunity to deliver the closing speech, and he had been preparing for weeks. After 8 minutes of deliberation, the jury returned with a guilty verdict, and Ralston ordered Scopes to pay a fine of $100, the minimum the law allowed. Although Bryan had won the case and had been changed publicly, humiliated, and his fundamentalist beliefs had been disgraced. 5 days later, on July 26, he laid down for a Sunday afternoon nap and never woke up.
In 1927, the Tennessee Supreme Court overturned the monkey trial verdict on a technicality but left the constitutional issue unresolved until 1968, when the U.S. Supreme Court overturned a similar Arkansas law on the grounds that it violated the First Amendment. Scopes was offered a new teaching contract but chose to leave Dayton and study geology at the University of Chicago Graduate School. He eventually became a petroleum engineer. Supporters of both sides claimed victory following the trial, but the Butler Act was upheld and the anti-evolution movement continued.
The trial revealed a growing chasm in American Christianity in two ways of finding truth, one biblical and one evolutionist. Author David Jotz writes that majority of Christians denounced evolution at the time. He contests the conventional view that, in the wake of the Scopes trial, a humiliated fundamentalism retreated into the political and cultural background, a viewpoint which is evident in the film Inherit the Wind, as well as a majority of contemporary historical accounts. Rather, the cause of fundamentalism's retreat was the death of its leader, Bryan. Most fundamentalists saw the trial as a victory rather than a defeat, but Bryan's death soon after it created leadership voids that no other fundamentalist leader could fill. Bryan, unlike the other leaders, brought name recognition, respectability, and the ability to forge a broad-based coalition of fundamentalists and mainline religious groups which argued in defense of the anti-evolutionary position. Adam Shapiro criticized the view of the Scopes trial was an essential and inevitable conflict between religion and science, claiming that such a view self-justifying. Instead, Shapiro emphasizes the fact that the Scopes trial was the result of particular circumstances, such as politicals postponing the adoption of new textbooks.
In 1927, there were 13 states, both in the North and in the South, that had deliberated over some form of anti-evolution law. At least 41 bills or resolutions were introduced into the state legislatures, with some states facing the issue repeatedly. Nearly all these efforts were rejected, but Mississippi and Arkansas did put anti-evolution laws on the books after the Scopes trial, laws that would outlive the Butler Act, which survived until 1967. In conclusion, the monkey trial was a battle between religion, the Bible, and science, Darwinism. Even though the main reason of the trial was to convict Scopes of the Butler's Act, the trial grew way beyond that. It helped the little town of Dayton grow and gain business for young entrepreneurs and popularity. It has affected the way we teach evolution today, and many still argue both sides.